Okay, so today I'm going to be making pan-fried steaks with mushrooms and red bell pepper garnishes, and I'll be making a balsamic vinegar reduction in the pan after we've completed the cooking of the meats and the vegetables. And I went to the grocery store to find some steaks, but they've all gotten pretty expensive recently, so I'm going to do kind of a poor man's steak. That is, I got a chuck roast here that's well marbled, and I'm going to cut it into strips, and then I'll be pan frying those strips, especially since we're going to be doing it along the grain, and that will cause it to be very soft. After it's been cooked, it'll fall apart a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead, take a super sharp knife, and just cut off the depth of steak that I want. It's always good to have a super sharp knife when you're cooking. I like to get my knives professionally sharpened at a cutlery store that's downtown. They're called Ambrosi Cutlery, and they'll sharpen your knives for about $4 a knife, or I think $6 a knife, and I think they'll do it for $8 if you wait there. So I'm going to just go ahead and do two of these. Do want to be careful though that after you get super sharp knives, they will cut through your flesh just like they cut through this flesh, no problem. We're just going to do two, and I'll hold on to these for later. So if you do end up getting yourself a super sharp knife, just be careful to not seriously injure yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle salt and pepper, as well as fennel and basil on this meat. That's my preferred spice mixture for red meat. And then I'm going to let it rest, bring them up to room temperature for about 30 minutes, maybe up to an hour, and then we'll get ready to pan fry them. So I've gotten the steaks spiced and they're coming up to room temperature. My next step now is to take care of the mushrooms and the red bell peppers. So what I'm going to do is start here with the mushrooms, and these are baby portobellos, but you can use any mushrooms that you like. And I have a way of removing the skin. It's not the same as, it's not just washing it under the sink, although you could do that. But I like to take the skin and just coax it off with a knife here. It's a little awkward doing it in the camera. I'm not really good at this yet, so I don't know what angles work. But I just peel these off. You don't have to do this. I just think it keeps water from getting inside the mushroom and getting it waterlogged right before you're trying to saute them. This is also a really nice way to do it right if you're doing a salad or something like that. Okay, so I have chopped up about 10 to 15 mushrooms and put them in here, and now I'm going to chop up a bell pepper. I prefer to use not green bell peppers. Red are going to be the sweetest, orange and yellow will be the next sweetest. Green bell peppers, I find them to be a little bitter and a little, they taste underripe to me. I just don't like that flavor, so I always use one of the colored bell peppers, but of course everyone's taste is their own, so you should find the taste that works for you. I try to cut out as much of the pith as I can without losing too much of the meat. And I'm not going to julienne them, but I will cut them rather thin. So it's a thin cut, but not quite a julienne cut. So I'm just going to cut this part out here. do that on the same, let's do the same thing on these two. Really good chefs will get into here and cut off this membrane part, but I can't get that into it personally. That's a little too much for me, but perhaps you would like to go there. All right, go ahead and thin cut these guys. Alright, I'm going to finish these up, and then we're going to saute these and the mushrooms together, and then we'll get to pan frying those steaks. So I'm heating up this stainless steel skillet. I'm going to heat it up really hot first, and then I'll put some canola oil in the pan, and then quite a bit of butter. The reason why I like to use oil with butter is because it prevents the butter solids from browning and then burning. So if you just have a little bit of oil, whether that's olive oil or canola, and usually when I'm making meat, I try to use canola because it's pretty flavorless. So I'm just feeling the pan right now, and it's warming up. I'm going to throw in some canola, and you can see it's starting to thin out. And I'm just gonna pop in about 2 tablespoons of soft butter. And this is unsalted butter that I'm using. I'm going to let some of the water that's in the butter boil off for a bit. And right before it starts turning brown, I'm going to throw my vegetables in. I'm going to start with the bell peppers and just start to soften them a little bit. And once they start to soften, I'm going to throw in the mushrooms and let them cook together. Now these are unseasoned, so I'm going to go ahead and add a pinch of salt, kosher salt, and some ground pepper. If you're cooking for fewer people, just 1 bell pepper would be fine. This would probably be enough for 3 or 4 meals. And these are starting to just loosen up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and add our mushrooms. Just going to add a little bit more salt. Now the mushrooms are going to soak up pretty much all of the liquid that's in this pan, all the liquid and fat, and as they cook, then they'll start to release liquid. So it may look like it gets really dry, and that'll just be momentarily as the mushrooms are soaking in all that oil before they re-release it. And fun little trick, I used to think that, you know, seeing chefs take their food and flip it like this was just about them being fancy, but the truth is it's to preserve the integrity of the food as you're mixing it. That way you're not just breaking it down over and over and over again. So sometimes when I'm sauteing food, I wouldn't recommend that. I don't have the strength to do that on a cast iron skillet, but you can get a pretty cheap, big stainless steel skillet like at Home Goods or maybe Target, but I like to go to Home Goods when I'm looking for cooking items. And you can start to see maybe some of that liquid starting to re-release. Let me see if I can get a good, yeah, you can see some of that liquid starting to re-release in the mushrooms, which is a good sign. It means they're cooking properly. So I'll get back, I'm going to let this cook for a little bit and I'll get back with you just as they're about to be finished. Alright, so now we're kind of at this texture that I like. It's soft and they're starting to just caramelize a little. So I'm going to go ahead and pour these into a bowl that I'm going to put in an oven that I'm warming at 200 degrees just to keep them warm while I'm cooking the steaks. And then get all of this out, and we're going to use the same pan to cook the meat in. So I just want to get that out, and we're going to do the same thing. Put in some canola oil, and then some butter. While that butter is going down, I'm going to put this in the oven. Throw my chuck roast steaks onto here. And you know, you can cook these as long as you'd like. 5 minutes on each side, 4 minutes, it's up to you depending on how much you like it. I'm making 3 different textures or 3 different cook variations. One that's well done, one that's medium well, and one that's medium. Okay, I'm going to start flipping these. I started on this one, so that's why it's looking a little wonky. So I personally like my steaks a little on the rarer side, so I'm going to go ahead and pull mine off. And put it on the salad here. And we're going to add those mushrooms and red bell pepper and then the sauce, which I'll show you at the very end. So I'm going to keep cooking these guys until it's time to make the sauce. Okay, so I just took the other steaks off, and now we're left with this fat. So I turned the heat down for just a second so it wouldn't burn, and now I'm turning it back up to get it hot before I add the balsamic vinaigrette, or the balsamic vinegar, which will then be turned into a reduction. So here it goes. So I turned it up to get the heat going, and then once we got that first boil off, I turned it back down so it doesn't burn. But you're going to put in, you know, quite a bit of vinegar, and what will happen is it'll be kind of a strong vinegar smell as the I guess as the vinegar is evaporating or volatilizing, but then it'll start to smell sweet, and then you'll know that your sauce is done at that point. Again, you want to smell regularly to make sure that it's not burning, and also to see where we are in the process. I also have a little bit of water on hand in case that vinegar starts to evaporate and we're quickly moving into burn territory, because that can be a fine line. So right now I have it on a simmer. Get that tasty bit out of there. Still a little bit of vinegar smell. It'll be quite pungent and maybe a little harsh on your nose, so make sure when you're pulling whiffs that you don't take a big deep breath, you just get a little whiff. All right, this looks good, and I'm just gonna add a dash of water here, just to thin it out a bit. And there is your semi-reduction sauce. I'm gonna add just a little bit of salt to that too. So taking a spoon here. This is such a good sauce for a salad. You get your meat drippings in there. It's just so delicious. Highly recommend. You can put it on rice, you can put it on mashed potatoes, you could just have the steak by itself. You don't even need to make the sauteed veggies if you don't want. It's just something that I like to do to make the meal a little bit fuller. So there you have it.